It's when we talked before we hit it record. Sanity was my jam, man. I absolutely loved what you guys are doing. Even when you joined in, was it about, I think it was December 7th, according to my research, over there in 2016. Um, Absolutely phenomenal. Just stuff that it's like, oh, okay, what's going to happen? How is this going to happen? Would it be the possibility of a Sanity reunion with EY and with Alexander Wolf? Now, I think EY is over in Impact, right?
Yeah, he's currently recovering from injury. He did
Yeah.
his ACL. Sadly, he was in incredible shape, putting on great matches. Just timing sucks, but you never say never when it comes to a Sanity reunion, for example. But one of the things, like, we would get so many people like tweeting us and texting us after we split up, and it's one of those things, like with Sanity, it was always going to have a shelf life, because we start as like really crazy, and then we need to start showing focus for who we go after next. And one of the hardest parts is when we got promoted and whatever else, was it needed to be a new Sanity, especially with Nikki not a part of the group. And how crazy could we go on national television? So there was a lot of ifs and buts and everything else. But for me personally, like, it was one of the best experiences of my life. But the very first day, you're talking about December 7th, so we filmed that a couple of weeks ago in the November. And that was the best and the worst day of my life, because in regard to the best, I'm debuting on WWE television. My wife is a part of the group, which is awesome, but I'm replacing a guy who got hurt, and it really sucked because Sawyer Fulton was a great guy. We were friends outside of this. He's one of the fellas, like, I always keep an eye on, and it was literally the worst day of my life because replacing somebody sucks. Somebody gets hurt, and then months later he got released himself, and like, I think I had like about 8 waves of guilt. You know what I mean? Because every time something else happened, and you're like, oh God, poor Sawyer. You know what I mean? But he's a great talent, and he's done really well for himself, and he's carving out a name for himself now and Impact himself. So, all fingers crossed for him and what he does next. But it was just a terrible situation, having to replace him. And then at the same time, you're going, well, this is my dream, and this is everything I've ever wanted, and it was a crazy, like, double-edged sword for me. But there was brilliant times. EY, I'd wrestled before. We wrestled in Impact, actually, in one of the UK tours. They were over, and myself and a few other guys who were kind of doing okay on the scene were invited in to do a few shows, and EY and I, like, we crammed everything into a 4-minute match. Immediately jammed with him as a person. He's just this infectious personality, really cool guy, great leader in the locker room as well. Like, he was willing to help anybody. Some people listened, some people didn't. But like, he was one of those people who just had everything. He even had like the crazy raspy voice, which just made him sound so different to everybody. And then Alexander Wolf became my best friend. So like, I'd met, again, he's another fella I met, like, literally as he was getting signed. He was giving me advice on my tryouts. My tryouts were after his, and his advice really helped me, because a lot of guys would be doing these 2 or 3 day affairs. Like, the tryouts in Britain were crazy at the time. They were like 8 hours of drills and whatever else to see who would, in-ring drills, cardio drills, everything else, to see, who could handle it and who had a bad attitude, who had a good attitude, and then there'd be matches at the end. But Wolf would give me really good advice, just simple stuff about what I should wear foot-wise and things like that. Because if I was wearing my wrestling boots, for example, my calves would eventually cramp up, or my feet would eventually cramp up. So he was saying, well, why don't you use your shooter boots? You'll get through the drills a breeze. And he was right. Like, I'd done a tryout years before that, but I was in full boots and like full gear, or whatever it was. And it was agony. It was torture. But I did it in my I think it was trainers or shooter boots, whatever else. And it was a breeze. Like, I ended up like having fun on the tryouts more than anything. Like, we prepared a lot for the cardio elements and things like that. But his concept was really smart. He even told me, like, bring things to like isotonic drinks, whatever else, just to make sure you can keep the acid at bay. And he was right. So like, and then even when Nikki got signed 6 months before I did, and Wolf and Sawyer were both incredibly nice to her, and they helped her a lot when they were on a tour. So it's just little things like that. And then when I joined the group, I'm like immediately, I'm with two guys who I already know and my wife, and I become great friends with both of them. Like the traveling with those guys was the utter best. We made every house show we did, every time we went to was like an adventure because we got to a point where we'd be hiring Airbnbs instead of going to hotels, as a way of just kind of make it interesting. And there were some brilliant experiences and some awful experiences, shall we say? But honestly, the two guys like made every 5 hour, 6 hour, 8 hour journey simple, and like they'll be friends for life. And like if we ever do something again together, it'll be incredible. So that would be something that we'd all look forward to, I'd imagine.